And that is where our discussion on people and politics begins this morning. First up, Miguna and Dr. Tienda Molo are away. I see already there's a lot of reactions here on Twitter. We wanted to put them to task over the remarks they made last week, but they're not here. So when they show up next week, we will talk about them. They spoke about the verdict of the court and the expected outcomes, but well, that did not go according to plan. So as soon as they come in, we'll ask them whether they're actually surprised. But I still have my guests with me, starting from my immediate left. Honorable Kimani Wamatangi, Senator Kiambu is with me. Honorable Mithika Linturi, Senator Meru is also with me. And Collins Mango is also a lawyer, is also with me. And Honorable friend Ouda, Member of Parliament Kisumu Central, is also joining us here on AM Live for the first time. Thanks for making time for us. And Wamatangi, I'll start with you. What do you make of the court ruling? What was your reaction when you heard the petitions were thrown out on lack of merit?
Trevor, let me begin from where you started off earlier, by lamenting the absence of Miguna and Otiende Amolo.
Yes.
And I remember last week we had a very heated discussion here, definitely with, especially with Miguna.
Yes.
Making a lot of predictions and almost at one point turning into a fortune teller, I mean for the other side. But that be as it may, and as you've said, when they come back, it's always good to put in perspective issues that we say or matters that we bring to light, so that in future they can inform Kenyans. But on my part, let me say, first, I think and I believe that it is time for this country, as I've said before, to find its step and start moving forward. Forget and put behind us all the happenings that have occurred before the decision of yesterday. It should have been, it was long overdue, as we said, and we say so with tremendous respect to the Supreme Court, that indeed the first time, as it were, we still had won the election. This second time, we won, and thanks God that the pronouncement came as it was, and upheld the victory of the president and his deputy. And more so, my concern right now is that this country must now start moving forward. We have lost so much. And
that was my main question. How do we move forward when half the country feels disenfranchised?
The simplest way to answer this is to state it as it is. Yeah. That the nature of democracy the whole world over is that way. That is competition wherever you go. Not even in democracy, wherever you go, in sports, in any competitive field where you go, there will always be a loser, there will always be a winner. The difference is always, when you win, are you willing to be accommodative? When you lose, are you willing to rise to the higher pedestal and acknowledge that you lost today, but you have an opportunity to win tomorrow? The most important thing is moving forward, so that then together you can get another opportunity to compete again. Remember the Swahili saying, asiyekubali kushindwa sio mshindani. Okay. So I would want to say first, I want to thank all Kenyans. I know we've had a few tests in the course. There was violence, and I want to also be among the first to send my very sincere condolences to all the families of those that lost their lives, and especially in the senseless violence that ensued in some of the cases, where because of irresponsible remarks by politicians and incitement in some of the cases, that innocent supporters of various formations found themselves in harm's way, believing that what their leaders are saying is indeed what they mean. The part that is dissuasive, that's uncanny, is that those that call for their supporters to do the things they do. You saw, like, for example, when we had this famous march, or infamous march, from the airport to town, and you saw what happened. All the leaders of Nasa were securely inside their vehicles most of them, and windows rolled up, and doors firmly locked, and the innocent wananchi outside, you know, to do the battling, the fighting, and the leaders are safe until when it's safe, that's when they get out to speak and then go back in. You ask yourself, is that really how we want to advance our democracy? Is that what we want to show our people as the way to go about competitive politics? So let me finalize by saying that now that the decision is here with us, remember when it was given against us in Jubilee, we accepted that decision, albeit, you know, painfully, but nevertheless we did.
Yeah.
Now that it is out and it has now settled the question of the elections, can we, and we want to beseech our colleagues on the other side, now close ranks, move the country forward, and put politics aside. Let the rest of Kenyans, you know, who are not politicians now, you know, join in and let's build the country. We have so many other Kenyans whose interest.
All right, Honorable Mithika, your sentiments on the ruling.
Yeah, first, let me thank the courts for the expeditious resolution of this dispute, and let me also try first encourage those that participated in the petitions to now get to work and kindly agree that in any election or in any dispute, not necessarily electoral disputes, before any court, there will always be winners and there will be losers. So what we are required to do as responsible Kenyans is to really take a stride forward and start building the country, start healing the country, so that we can have a more cohesive Kenya after this judgment, knowing that the president has really a heavy duty to carry everyone on board, to bring the country together, and it requires each one of us to do his duty towards that end. But allow me to say that when the judges made a finding that the cases were not merited, I think we really need really to ask what that meant. From where I sit and from my interpretation of the wordings of the statement by the Chief Justice, I am left wondering whether those people or the petitioners really didn't take quite a lot of time to look at the issues they were taking before court, to look at the facts that they had, to look at the evidence that they had, because a case being lost for lack of merit means that the case was not grounded on the Constitution, the law, and as the case was set out properly, never brought about the particular violations that were carried out or that took place in the conduct of the last general election, either by the IEBC, by the respondent himself. And to that extent, the petitioners in their case were unable to demonstrate there were factual issues for consideration. There was evidence that was before court that probably would have persuaded the judges to think differently. And for that matter, whatever issues that were canvassed before the courts then would not have any bearing towards make a changing or altering the decision of the people, either qualitatively or quantitatively, as the judges were trying to come up with a verdict of this particular matter. So for that matter, I think that is now past us. Today, what happened yesterday is history. Yeah. What is important is how we want to manage our country from now henceforth. And I want to appeal to the NASA team. The NASA team is really a very, and especially the former Prime Minister, you know, is a respected Kenyan leader. Yeah. And a time has come when he has also to make a decision whether to destroy his legacy, whether to sit down and think positively for the greater good of this country and ask all the issues, the things that I fought for this particular country, for the life that I've been in politics, whether I want to destroy it in a day or two by not reflecting back and trying to become a statesman and trying to assist the other leaders in getting out the country in the kind of a problem that it is now. Because I think he has the power, he has the capacity to call his supporters and tell them, look, it is us as a country, it is Kenya that continues to suffer more as we continue this way. And as long as the greater interests of the country are taken care of, one person by the name Raila Odinga will not make a difference. I remain as your leader. But since I understand there are issues that must be addressed, and which either now or in the future, let us sit down, listen together, and see how we can progressively address the issues to have this country for this country not to have a repeat of such a situation in the future. That meaning that look at what can be done legally, whether it requires constitutional changes, whatever it takes, because personally I believe time has come when we must deal with this constitution. The constitution as is now does not really provide us an opportunity to sort out political disputes when required. Does not give us an opportunity for those people that feel that are excluded from power to have an opportunity to say, yes, we belong. This is something we must deal with now, whether we are in NASA, whether we are in Jubilee, wherever we are. We must be able to address this thing, and we don't have to shy away from this, because this is a problem that we have to contend with.
All right. Collins, from a legal perspective, when the judges throw out a case for lack of evidence, does that show that the lawyers were incompetent, or what happened there?
Thank you very much, Trevor. First of all, I'd like to start by maybe agreeing with most of the part that colleagues here on the panel have said. But just looking into yesterday's ruling that was delivered at around 10 by the Honorable Chief Justice and the fellow judges, I think Kenyans should move away from the notion that there was a winner and a loser in this case. I think the closest challenger to President Uhuru on the October 26th election was Dr. Ekuru Okot, who clearly supported the petition. So if it's talking about a winner and a loser, then perhaps you are talking of a voter losing. And this petition was instituted by, registered voters. And they thought that their rights as voters had been breached, or other rights of other voters had been breached. But going into your question, I think there are a lot of points, talking points from yesterday's decision. The only disadvantage is that the judges kept it very brief, and they promised to come back in 21 days. So really there isn't much to talk about in terms of merit and demerits. But just from the procedure and what went on in court, I think there are a number of things that can make me say that the ruling did not come as a surprise. I mean, especially when it came to the ruling on the scrutiny. You remember the second and third petitioner, George Omu and Halid Halifa, wanted some specific access, that is to the KM's kit, the SD cards. There was a very interesting aspect when it came to the Form 32As, and I think the major bone of contention was also, the voters that were identified manually. So I think by the judges not granting them such access, I mean, it was a big blow to their case. And also let us remember that they had a number of memos, internal memos, that were also expunged from the proceedings. So their case, I'd say, was not as strong as petition number 1 of 2017. Then secondly, in terms of even the presentation by the legal teams, they might have fallen a bit short.
we remember very well, even during the proceedings, there were a number of questions that, you know, they were rightfully asked and probably could not provide a very good answer or, you know, specific answers to the judges.
Yeah.
So this might have, you know, contributed to them not having a very strong case. But in terms of litigation, it was not as strongly argued as last time.
Yeah.
But we'll wait for the 21 days so that we can hear, you know, the detailed judgment of the judges.
Okay.
But there are very serious constitutional questions. Mheshimiwa said it's time that Kenyans maybe have a look at our constitution. There are very important questions that have been raised. I mean, not also putting into consideration the just recently passed the Election Amendment Act.
Yeah.
But there are still a number of questions, you know, what is the effect of abandonment of a presidential candidate?
Yeah.
You know, what exactly happens?
So all that still needs to be determined.
It still needs to be determined. So we'll wait for the 21 days. There are those who have, you know, given up and say the ruling might not be as significant, but I think there are a lot of things that the court will pronounce itself in the coming 21 days.
All right. Honorable Fred Ouda, what was your reaction when you had the court ruling?
First of all, Trevor, may I thank God for this day. How you made me to see this day, because I could have died on Friday when my party leader came back. Because I'm shocked when one of my colleagues says that we were safely in our cars. Yet some of us were even on foot, running, still fighting on for the cause of justice in this country. About yesterday's ruling, I want to say I was not shocked. But it was a sad day in this country.
Yeah.
It's a day I saw a dark cloud looming over this country. It's a time of event that maybe it's a day I will not want to remember in my life. And of course, Trevor, it's because the ruling yesterday, I really don't, I'm not a lawyer by profession.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't aspire to be one. But as a Kenyan, I had serious questions as this came on. But though I wasn't surprised, but it's serious questions. Trevor, it goes without saying that a credible election, or rather election, that every single Kenyan can accept is an election that has been conducted in a free, fair, and conducive atmosphere. Election that is credible and that is without any reproach.
Yeah.
We all remember all the events that took place shortly before the so-called 26th election, which to me was a sham. It wasn't an election. You remember the riots, the resignations, the internal memos,
yeah,
the back and forth between the chairman and his commission. You remember all that.
Which were all expunged from the court.
And then you ask yourself, was that a conducive environment? Was that an atmosphere to conduct a free, fair, and credible election? You ask yourself. Then you get to an answer where Mithika Linturi and my friend Kimani Wamatangi, whom we're in the same house here, agree with me that it wasn't conducive. But I still believe, as much as the court had pronounced itself that an election, a repeat election, a repeat fresh presidential election should be conducted.
Yeah.
But in an event that you're faced with such circumstances, then you ask, it was only the IEBC, if at all, they were not doing everything under the whims of a particular team.
Yeah.
In this case, I mean Jubilee. They could have gone back to the court and ask the same bench that, my friends, this is what the Constitution says. But the same Constitution says that we should conduct a fresh presidential election within 60 days. But again, it says we must conduct this election in a free, fair, and conducive environment.
Yeah.
Then the court could have given us a determination. So whatever came out yesterday, Trevor, we all agree that it's true. To me, I respect Maraga, I respect the bench. But my friends, whatever happened yesterday was not a ruling coming from Maraga or that bench. Actually, you remember a week before, I mean a day before a case that you took to court, that actually the civil society took to court. The entire bench wasn't there, except Maraga and one more. There was this shooting of Philomena Mwilu's driver, which tells you it was an act of intimidation.
Okay.
And then you remember after the annulment of the August election, how our Kora to Tadil Nawao. And this comes from the so-called head of state, my friend, even if it were you, and you can remember the Msando cold murder. Then the ruling could not have come because they know they were touting so many things to them. Oh, the country is disintegrating, the economy is going down, oh, now you have to make this thing as a Kenyan. And I'm sure most of that, because if the bench could expunge all those things out, yet they knew the environment and the internal memos. For them to expunge all these things out, simply it was because so many things were threatened around them. So to me, finally, I must say it was a bad day for Kenyans, but a luta continues.
I find it strange, though, Honorable, that this is the same court that annulled the first presidential petition. Was Maraga acting on his own then and not now?
No, let me tell you. When you took the case to court, you remember the 8th August election.
Yeah.
The atmosphere heading to the August election was not similar to the kind of an atmosphere we saw. There was not even this back and forth between the chairman and the CEO. There was not all these internal memo and resignations. Now we are playing a different scenario when it comes to August 26th. There were demonstrations in part of the country. Trevor, it's your own media house that was covering parts of Kakamega, parts of Kambani, parts of Northeastern. And up to 2 p.m., most polling stations, they only casted two votes.
In all fairness, in some places there was a big turnout.
Of course. And after even as we had people going around, we also had our own surveillance.
Yeah.
And then at night, it's 7.1. Then you wonder why the 7.1. So the atmosphere is what I was talking about.
Okay.
Because the same constitution also talks about the atmosphere.
All right.
Yeah.
Honorable Wamatangi, this atmosphere that we're talking about, who created it to seem the way it is now?
You know, probably what I would say, Trevor, is that after the full judgment has been released, and we can go through it, I'm sure there are quite a number of areas that we'll tackle that will be of a lot of interest. What one would not fail to think to his mind right now is probably in what mindset was the court in when they were making that decision. And one of the very high possibilities one would be looking at, and in my view, is how willing is a court going to be or should be to be used as a launching pad for political battles. You know, and I say this in this respect. How does, for example, when a candidate has moved to the court with allegations, an election is annulled, and midway, seemingly and intent to play, you know, a poker. I'll call it poker for that matter. You know, a game of chances. That's what I mean. That if I do this, this might happen. Then that you probably abandon the process. Use proxy to go to court after that, and would the court be in a mindset to want to continue to be you know, a pad that you can use different players and dimensions to come and land on and launch your next political escapades?
Yeah.
Probably that is a mindset that the court would definitely, you know, not want to be in.
So you're putting this issue between public interest and the rule of law.
And yeah, absolutely. Let me come to that specific question.
Yeah.
You know, see, for example, like when we talk about a conducive atmosphere. You know, a conducive atmosphere, what are we saying really? Because ask yourself, this atmosphere that is unconducive is absolutely created by political players. Once you know that the court has said, let us have an election within 60 days, and so the election will have to happen, and that is what the Constitution says. If you have grievances towards or about the process that is leading to that order, then there is a way, there are provided for means and avenues through which you can either mitigate or ventilate, and you can go and raise your queries. But because you intend to make it so difficult for the election to be conducted, you create the so-called unconducive atmosphere. And interesting enough, you know, because now the court has ruled, so you can delve into the specific issues that were there. But though, as I've said, I'm waiting for the detailed ruling. You see, that was one of the prime questions that was posed to the court. Were the elections of the 26th do they meet the threshold of a free and fair election? Remember, that was one of the questions that was posed. And I can bet my last dime that what a judge would be thinking is have you come to court with clean hands? And I'm sure that's what Wakili would be telling you, because that definitely must come to the court mind. You know, Trevor, I cannot use you to go and light a fire there and then come to court and say, you know, because there was a fire there that was lit by Trevor, although, you know, there are so many indications and similarities that indicate that I could have been the one playing with you, then I say, you know, give me this relief because I would not have gone past it. That's what we're saying. But by and large, Trevor, at this point in time, this is what we must be saying. Because if you ask me, politicians must do this country not the favor but the right to let the country to move on now, to move forward. Right. I insist, as far as I'm concerned and where I stand, that if you now try to quantify, the losses Kenyans have had to live with for that period since when we went for the elections, or actually indeed when we started the electoral process, from heading to the nominations until the elections of the 8th, our losses are massive. I mean, in every sector. So we cannot continue to play around that issue. And I want to say to my friends in NASA, you know, these games are self-defeating. You know, and especially, Trevor, I want to make a case for the current case. For the current mindset of Kenyans, for the current, for the person of you and me now, and how we think and look at things, we are way past that, past that milestone whereby, you know, we used to see and think of things, especially political, in the old fashion. We are more enlightened now. I mean, you can tell when you're being led to success, or when you are being used, you know, for selfish gain. So I want to tell my colleagues, let's polish up this thing. Let's want this country to be a better place. Give our country a better place. I want to support what Mithika Linturi was saying as I finalize, because what then this process has also taught us is that there are so many loopholes. There are so many gaping gaps that are still in our constitution that we want to find now a good ambient time that we can be able to address some of those issues, so that we do not have a repeat scenario of what we have had, for example, like this time. All right. Yeah, we need especially, you know, the articles about elections, about the rights and powers of our people, conduct of the elections. I think that one we need to look at, among other many.
Honorable Mithika, does the honorable friend Ouda have a point? Because he says during that elections, some people were disenfranchised, others did not manage to vote, the atmosphere was not conducive. We saw the memos which were expunged from court, however, but as a Kenyan and as a voter, do you reckon that was a fair elections in your own assessment? Let's now leave out the Supreme Court ruling.
And I will know, Trevor, with a lot of respect, tremendous, and humility to my colleague. You know, my colleague should really respect institutions or anybody else that thinks that this panel has capacity to determine whether an election has been done fairly, freely, and transparently. It's out of our domain. We can only make comments, and I always advise that when we come here, we should not come carrying this political party baggage that I represent Jubilee, represents Nasa, come and debate just like any other normal Kenyan, a member of parliament elected who has right to look at things objectively and come out with suggestions that can resolve the problems of our people as a country. And I am making these comments because I have listened to him, and I really apologize. I am sorry for the kind of, whether it was treatment that you got when your leaders were coming, and thank God, really, God must be great, you are not hurt. It was a very unfortunate incident, but before I make comments on the issues to do with the fairness of the election, I must also remind you, as a Kenyan citizen, that if you indeed know that you want to whip emotions of your people to go to the streets and confront the police, because you know it is expected when the police is saying don't get to the airport because it's a security area, it's a protected area, and you deliberately and with a lot of vigor want to say that you will get into the airport, there is anybody that is reasonable must understand that the full force of the law or the police will have to make sure that the duty to secure the airport is maintained. And for that matter, in one way or another, you may clash with them. So the police may not even have been, you may not have been a target. But in the normal course of duty, when these things happen, then they must be taken to mean that whatever the action the police took was for the greater and best interests of the other people that are not in the streets. And you must also understand that even as you demonstrate, okay, so it's your democratic right to demonstrate, but you know, remember, even as you do it, then your right should not try to impede, or you should not run over the rights of other people. Yeah. And for example, let me get back to the court decision of whether this matter was fair or not. You know, the court has had an opportunity to listen to both the sides, to the respondents, the petitioners, the interested parties in the matters that were before them. And what was before them, and if I hand Justice Maraga, well, the issues before court for determination was one, whether the election was done in accordance with the law, was whether the effect of the 290 constituencies not voting. And because I can only infer, I can only try to contemplate what informed the judges in coming up with a unanimous decision upholding the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And my thinking is that because these issues must have been canvassed in the hearings, they must have come up with the decision to uphold the election because they were not persuaded. No evidence, no facts were presented before them. Because I am sure that court, I can bet, is completely independent. Okay. It's a court we cannot decide or tell, make a decision on this way, make a decision on another. And I think they have proved themselves. And this is the time we agreed as Kenyans to be bound by court decisions. And when anybody trying to say that the court made a mistake or errant in the ruling they did, then must be very selfish. Okay. Because when who in the world would have imagined, and especially in Africa and Kenya, that our court would sit down and allow the election of a president? Our courts did. Yeah. That is, in my view, that was great. Okay. And it is to that extent that we must also tell the NASA team, if the president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, saying yes, I don't agree with the decision of the court, but I will be bound, and I am bound by the decision, and I have to go back to the people. Then, when another ruling is made by the same court, then you Nasa guys must respect the ruling of that court and be bound by the ruling, and that is how to keep a country together.
And Mithika, there was a complaint from the Honorable that you didn't answer the question, that in your own fair assessment as a voter and as a Kenyan, did you think the election was fair, having seen all the back and forth, some places just having been stopped from voting, violence in some areas, low voter turnout? Do you reckon it was fair? Very briefly, just one sentence.
No, I can't answer such a question by one sentence. But I want to make it clear to my friend. Yeah. The basis of my assessment of a fair and free election will purely be based on certain aspects that will constitute fairness. When the INBC says that we're doing an election in the 290 constituencies and they send people, the turning officers with the ballot boxes and materials, and then you come up with goons to stop INBC officers from delivering materials to those polling stations. That is not the making of INBC. Number two, when people decide not to turn out and vote for their leaders, that cannot be blamed on INBC or any other candidate that is participating in the election. Remember, our constitution does not make voting mandatory. It is voluntary. So if you want to go and vote, fine. If you don't, sour. And the law as is and Article 138 for one to be declared the President of the Republic of Kenya, then there are certain parameters that election must meet. One is to look at the elections, the number of votes cast in that particular election and see whether the candidate to be declared as 50 plus 1. 50 plus 1. So that's what it means in very simple English. If 1 million people turn out to vote for a presidential election in Kenya and only 500 plus 1 come out to vote and the other candidate has only 400 or 499, then that person will be declared president as long as he has another 25% of the votes cast in at least 24 counties in the country. That is the legal provision. That is the criteria. So whether people turn out or not, or whatever percentage turn out, is their business. So as far as I am concerned, and probably the other question you want to know is that the effect of people not voting in 290 in some of the 365 constituencies. Remember, one of the things that will now the INBC or the chairman or the returning officer that will put in mind to determine whether that election would have been done in accordance with the law is to check whether how many people did not vote in an election in those particular constituencies, and then compare them along the number of votes that the presidential candidate earned from all the others. And even if they did not vote, and as long as the difference between the number 1 and number 2, and considering what effect or numbers from the constituencies that did not vote would have on the election, then he made it clear with the president, the president. But in the event that the numbers of the number of voters from those constituencies that never turned up for election would have a bearing on the last resort if they had cast their votes, and because we didn't know or would not have known whether they would have done it or not without being given an opportunity, then it would have been tricky for them to declare. So in the circumstances that we are in today, Uhuru Kenyatta and around 7.4 or 7.5 million votes. The people that did not vote from the 4 counties in Omambe, Kisumu, Siaya, and Migori were around 1.8. So the difference between him and the second number 2 would not have done any difference even if the 1.8 million votes were cast in favor of one particular candidate. So in my opinion, the rules were met that underlie or that would have determined the outcome of the election, and the declaration was done in conformity with the constitution, and the election was free and fair because we not have forced anybody else to fight to do it, and Nasa, by the way, that's why you not even have been enjoined in that particular case, because you don't go to seek EU. There is a maxim in law that say EU seeks equity must do so with clean hands. Yeah. So you cannot stop people from voting and yet go to complain, right, in the court that you want justice. It's not possible.
All right. Honorable Fred Ouda, do you think it's time for constitutional reforms? Because maybe there are flaws in democracy and maybe even flaws in our own constitution. Because like he rightfully says, if a million people vote, 500,001 vote for one person, the other 499,000 can be disregarded.
Trevor, there's one matter I want to go to, and that's the matter of Friday, because Kimani Wamatangi has gone there and Mithika Linturi has gone there. Now, it is the same Kimani Wamatangi today and my friend Mithika Linturi today, that one day when two individual Kenyans were facing some international crime prosecution at The Hague, and that was then Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto came back from The Hague. I can remember very well. Even Wamatangi's vehicle was actually blowing all over the media, you know, the truck and the pickups, and he was carrying supporters inside the airport. And I can remember the airport that day was jammed by the Jubilee supporters. And I'm trying to ask myself today that our Nasa leader wasn't going to hold a rally at the airport. We were going to welcome our leader, and we notified police, or we notified the police on the same. The way they did, and I'm even doubting if they ever notified the police when Uhuru and Ruto were coming from The Hague. Those were Kenyans going to actually welcome their leaders that time. Now, Friday were the same Kenyans going to the airport to welcome their leaders. Now, what I'm asking, that time when they were welcoming Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto from The Hague, was there no Al-Qaeda? Was that airport not a restricted area? Why is it that on Friday it was not a restricted area and there are so many security threats? Is it because that NASA supporters come from Al-Qaeda community or they are Shabab or ISIS? That's a question. That aside, even me, myself, and you can ask your reporters, I was stopped. I only brought chaos at the gate for me to go in. And yet I'm a VIP in this country and I was being stopped. Now, our leader moved out and we were now at Mombasa Road. And the crowd was huge. And we were just singing and dancing, touching nobody's property. Was the tear gas a GM and the gunshots and the water tankers, was it warranted? At the Enterprise Road, we are off Mombasa Road now. We are actually down there in the estates. Enterprise Road, Likoni Road, joining Njogo Road. Was that tear gas, gunshot and wounding people and maiming people, was it warranted, including us? At City Stadium roundabout, at Mudurwa. What we are trying to say, we have a government that has already decided that some people are more Kenyans than others. And that is our complaint. And if at all Mithika Linturi is talking with clean hands, that this country should heal, it should start from there. That then, them as Jubilee should sit down and then treat each other, treat every single Kenyan equal. Okay. And they should know that we are all equal and nobody is anyone guest in this country. If they are talking about constitution review, they should do so with clean hands. Because then I will ask, why then were they bringing the amendments in parliament shortly before the 26th election? Simply because they were seeing a situation where maybe the Chief Justice will not swear in Uhuru Kenyatta, where Chebukati might not actually declare Uhuru the president. So they're changing laws. And as much as they want to lie to us that the president did not sign it, after 14 days it became law.
All right.
So what we are saying, as much as there will be constitution changes in this country, then Mithika Linturi and the entire Jubilee team should first cleanse their mind, come with clean hands, and first of all, put what you call succession politics of 2022 aside. Because if you ask me today, Trevor, this country has been held ransom by succession in 2022. And I'm telling you that is the truth. That is where we are. That is why Kenyans will die. Because some people might must just become president. It does not matter how many Kenyans will die.
You do know the reverse is also true. The Jubilee side says some people in NASA must become president. No matter how many
and this is
people
what we are saying. The people currently who to me, if you ask me, are illegally in power and holding the instruments of power. And they are using it to do their own things. Of course, because they have the numbers in parliament, the so-called numbers in parliament, and the entire leadership in parliament, and the entire leadership in government, they think now they can do everything the way they wish and the way they think. And we are saying, fine, that is there. But then, if Mithika Linturi, whatever he's saying, and why I'm saying him, is because he said we must first be Kenyans, not politicians.
Okay.
But from his answers, he's a Jubilee politician, the way he's talking.
All right.
And so I'm a NASA politician, and I'm advising him
Yes.
that we are not going to take this lying down. Okay. And that's why we are saying everybody must come here with clean hands.
Okay.
For us, we have no any issue. We don't have succession politics in 2022. All we are saying that there must be electoral justice and stop electoral fraud in this country.
Mithika, and you're the one who brought up the issue of he who words equity must first come with clean hands. And we were talking about moving forward for the country. And Stephen here, Odhiambo, says, if you ask the panelists, how do people who lost their breadwinners in the hands of police and Mungiki forget and move on? Do you reckon that there were some excesses? Are you going to admit that one?
So I will remind that one on one legal common law doctrine.
Yes.
Called doctrine of volenti non fit injuria. This legal doctrine says EU takes him to a place where there is expectation of harm and gets armed in the process. Then he doesn't seek remedy or compensation. These gentlemen, as I started by telling them, when you want to face the police with your chest, and the you are aware that Nasa demonstrators are people that are not civilized. I am sorry to use the word civilized, because Nasa demonstrators, you find them with stones, with the fire, with the tires. You don't demonstrate. That is not what was contemplated by the Constitution of having a peaceful, unarmed demonstration. When people were going to receive President Uhuru Kenyatta when he came from the Hague, nobody went there with machetes. I found last night on TV that gentleman that was in the street as a pen, I don't know whether you call them swans or pen knives, pocket knives, just taken out of his body, and you would wonder what the intention was carrying a knife in a demonstration. Definitely, that should tell you that guy was not carrying that knife for any other purpose other than to harm. But allow me to say this. The police are men and women born by Kenyans. They only decided to become policemen and decided not to work as lawyers or as teachers or anybody else. When a policeman is hit by a stone from a demonstrator, it is the son of Linturi or Luoch or whoever else is it. You don't lose your identity as a citizen or a Kenyan child by virtue of being a police officer. So even as we engage the police, even as we want them to give us protection, then we must know they are people. And when you want protection from them, understand this is your brother, this is your sister. He's only on duty. And because he has the higher responsibility of taking care of securing you, then that does not mean he also doesn't require security. And that is why in our law books, you know, we have allowed the police to use reasonable force to deal with the demonstrators or even to shoot if his life is in danger. So how he decides to use that firearm depends on his judgment, and that is left to him. Because you can't throw a stone and hit a police officer and expect that now you run away, you run after you and catch you and then handcuff you. It is not possible. So let us, my brother, let us understand one thing, that we do not have to have Kenyans losing lives, because we must always make sure that so and so becomes president or whoever it is.
All right.
Let us know. Let us realize. Let me tell you. And it doesn't matter. This I can tell you without any fear of contradiction. Even if Raila Odinga was become president today, that guy living in Kiribera, that guy living in Babandogo, or wherever he is, even doesn't wake up early in the morning, go and do his business, work, Raila Odinga will not put food on his table. Okay. And it should not be assumed that since President Kenyatta is the president of this republic, right, the people in Meru are not suffering as Kenyans because he's the president. Okay. The people in Kiambu, I am sure Matangi will bear with us, there are people in Kiambu that are as poor as those people in Nyanza. So let us assist these people. Let us assist the legally elected president, create an enabling environment for us to do business, for everyone to wake up early in the morning without fear, right, of meeting with the demonstrators, without anybody opening a shop and the shop being looted, so that these people can embark on their day-to-day business.
Wamatangi, this is actually a question to you, Wamatangi.
Yes.
Wamatangi, you know, yesterday I was sitting here with Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, the Kisumu governor, and the speaker said that the supporters tend to be uncivilized, and also Ligina Eric here says NASA has a reputation of bringing havoc and destruction of property whenever they gather. Imagine they would have brought that and done it to the airport. But Nyang' Nyong'o was sitting here yesterday, and he told me that he was there during the demonstrations. It was not their supporters. It was people infiltrated their supporters. And he gave me a simple example. How would their own supporters stone their own vehicles?
Well, I'll answer that. But as I answer that, because I know you'll be going to Wakili soon, there's a question I wanted him to address as we leave the question of the issue of the ruling of the Supreme Court. Because of a lot of interest was what the judges said. You know what they said? They said that those petitions were not merited. I wanted him to address that, you know, because that's very informing. You know, when the court rules in dismissal that it is lack of merit that informs the decision. I think, you know, Wakili speaking for probably, you know, himself. I don't know whether Wakili is also a NASA supporter.
But the rule of law remains the same.
But he may want to say that. But let me address that question that you're asking.
Yeah, were there excesses in your own assessment on both sides?
Why don't we go to the first question?
All right, go ahead.
On the infiltration.
It still ties to the same thing,
yes. On the infiltration. And I was somehow impressed by some of the coverage that was given by NTV, especially on that day, because you know, it showed a new sense of freedom of the president, not being probably aligned to report in a certain way. I remember in some of the photos that were captured very well, an NTV photojournalist captured a demonstrator actually aiming at a policeman with an arrow, to shoot the policeman with an arrow. Remember, there were some young men here near Mudhurwa who emerged, because the broadcast, as you saw, you know, was all live and through the entire procession. Some of them emerging and coming, not only stoning the police vehicles, but actually then they went ahead and burned the police vehicles. I don't know which vehicles he says that were stoned by their own. How would they be stoning their own? But so many motorists, and the picture that is replayed is precisely what you showed there in the clip that ran before we sat for this panel, in the news bite in Kisumu, where a motorist was stopped, chased, was being caned, and his vehicle was destroyed. Now, let's not even go so further in looking at what was happening on Friday. Ask and look at what has been happening every day when they have been having their demonstrations that were already timetabled by them on Monday, on Wednesday, and Fridays. All the way from beginning, from the forceful expulsion of IEBC officials until this time when they were agitating for no reforms, no elections. How much destruction, how many vehicles have you seen them stoning and looting? I mean, even small skilled traders, and you saw some of them on photo running away with small, gas cylinders looted from very small scale traders. Others helping themselves to small cookies and biscuits and sausages being sold by vendors on the roadsides, and that is the issue. When Mheshimiwa there talks about they were blocked and denied access to the airport, and after being denied access, why had we been allowed access? And he makes a comparison of the two. Let us say this because it is important for us to address it. One, politicians cannot be insensitive. We don't live in a vacuum, and neither can they pretend to. And this is where probably you have to separate honesty and dishonesty in playing your politics. If and when we know what has been happening to the country since the annulment of the election and where we are now, one, we must all agree, if we are honest, that the country has been very tense. Now, going ahead to plan the mass rally, the planning and the march to the airport, and of course their members being known and having the reputation of the things that they have done, including injuring policemen themselves, then you'd ask yourself, at a time when a country is suffering from a low tourist flow, businesses are suffering, is this the time when you would be saying that the best way to welcome somebody when those circumstances are prevailing, who has been here and only went away for those 10 days ago, is to go and aggravate the situation? Secondly, ask yourself, what is so difficult from our friends here at that time allowing their leader to come, drive his way to town, they pick on a destination and liaise with law enforcement, that is the police, and pick on a venue, and they have been allowed meetings all the way. Ask yourself, since when we started this election cycle, how many meetings and rallies have they held? How many demonstrations have they held? How many times have they marched through the city streets? Yeah. So there is absolutely no comparison. What we're saying is that the arrangement, the entire thing was really mischievous. The arrangements there were intended to contain and to poison the situation so that it can be worse. What I would want to advise to my colleagues as a finalist is this. This thing has been said so many times over that the country is bigger than all of us. Now none of us is bigger than the country. But we say it so many times and take it for granted, and such that it just becomes a cliche that you can recite. But it has no meaning to especially politicians. I mean, can you start taking it for real and internalizing it and knowing that when you say you want to march through Jogoo Road and your intention is to amass people from Jogoo Road and Bama and Shauri Moyo and bring them to town so that town can become chaotic now that you have collected everybody on the way. Can you also remember that where you're marching and doing those things and looting from the small businesses in Bama, those people have families, they have children, they have to go home, their fathers, their mothers. And unless this is addressed to politicians, we will continue to suffer this kind of malady that we had on Friday. Okay. Thanks heaven that at the end of the day, at least, and I said, I really condole with those that lost their lives and their families. But thanks heaven that at the end of the day, the chaos that they may have intended to meet on the country, because remember, and my friend Mheshimiwa, when you go back to your party meetings in NASA, I would want to ask you to be an emissary, because I have not met your leader, Raila Amolo Odinga. Sometimes I run into him when he goes into in a gym here in town, when he's coming to work out after the rallies. But I say, take a humble message to him. His father, his own father, was amongst the people who fought and struggled for the freedom of this country, amongst like Jomo Kenyatta and the rest. Yeah. And until we became a republic, it is completely out of order for him to leave this country and go and put together and bring together Kenyans who have been working outside this country for years, and some of them willing and longing to come back home and hear good news about their country. Right. That he will go there and put them together and tell them, my friends, my fellow Kenyans, the project you left called Kenya has failed. Yeah. Tell him to remember that we are still a republic. Okay. We are not a failed project. And Honorable Mithika, there's a lot of discontent on social media about the terms you use. Dikembe here says Mithika Linturi actually used the word primitive, as in NASA demonstrators are primitive. These are people. So no, I'm giving you a chance
No, I did not use
to apologize.
The word primitive. No. Let me tell you, I take responsibility of the ones that I use. I sent NASA demonstrators uncivilized. That's what I sent. And I demonstrated why I call them uncivilized. Because the peaceful demonstrations contemplated by this constitution are demonstrations where you go unarmed and peacefully. That is what the law. Anybody coming up with a demonstration outside what the law provides for is behaving uncivilized because you do not really understand what the law talks or what the law looks at as a peaceful demonstration. So no armed demonstrations are allowed, and anybody going armed for any demonstration is behaving in an uncivilized manner, because civilized societies like the US or anywhere else, you go in your ties, you go shouting and carrying your placard, because the demonstrations are meant to convey messages.
And Collins, there are two questions for you, and I know you've been quiet for a while. One, the Honorable Kimani Wamatangi wanted you to justify what it means when the petitions are thrown out for lack of merit. That's number one. And then from me, are there chances when public interest outweighs the rule of law when it comes to judgment?
Yes, thank you very much, Trevor. I was waiting for this turn for quite some time. Yes, I have written a number of points here, so I don't know if I'll take longer. But just to go straight into his question, in terms of talking of the petitions being unmerited, I think there are a number of factors that they looked into. And first of all was the evidence produced. And in my opening statement, of course, I'd already noted of some of the documents that they were to rely on that were expunged, and of course them being denied a part of the kind of information they wanted to strengthen their case. So those are some of the consideration. Then the second thing might be the burden of proof, where the burden of proof being on the petitioner majorly. So they had the major burden of proving their case. So did they really prove their case as per the required threshold? And let us remember very well that last time elections there was a lot of debate in that they were saying it is also not just about the process but also about the numbers. And you see, in this petition, they pretty much fell short of challenging both the process and the numbers. And of course, on your question on public interest, there are a number of occasions where public interest has been used as a consideration. We remember back before the 8th August election, during the Al Ghurair row at the Court of Appeal. Of course, public interest being considered, and in that the ballot papers had to be printed. Then the court had to look into consideration time factor and the public interest. Now there's been a lot of pressure in terms of economic pressure, where Kenyans have gone through hard times during this election period, bearing in mind that nothing much has been happening, even just from the government. Government bodies, parastatals have bared a lot of burden of this election. So public interest, yes, is considered, but there's a way I'd like to look at public interest. I'd like to say the defense of the Constitution also forms part of public interest. Why I'm saying that is because, a breach of any regulation or article of the Constitution then is, in a way, breach of the Constitution. Let us know that this is the binding document that all Kenyans abide with. So any breach of the Constitution, to me, is also part of public interest. That's another way I'd like to look at it. But just to maybe comment on one or two things that have been discussed, and I'd like to start with the good senator from Meru, on a legal principle he's quoted, volenti non fit injuria. His interpretation was, in a way, maybe to suit his narrative. You know, it's a legal principle that talks of, you know, self-inflicting injury. And in my analysis, to be fair to the demonstrators, I don't think, you know, this was as a result of one maybe shooting himself. But really, I think as Kenyans, we must now, you know, have a look at a balance of, you know, the right, you know, of protection of property, and also the equivocal right in Article 37 of freedom of assembly. Yeah. So where do we find the balance? I mean, there are also very unfortunate incidents. There's in one of the dailies, I read of, you know, a woman who owned an M-Pesa shop who, you know, was gang raped, and I don't know, maybe, you know, yeah, passed on. So we really must look into such things, even as we want our right to, you know, to assemble, to be protected. Then, Trevor, maybe just to talk on the judiciary a bit. I think what has held Kenyans, you know, majority of this difficult time, yeah, is their confidence in the judiciary. And I think this is a thing that Kenyans ought to protect even with their lives. I mean, the independence of the judiciary is what has given Kenyans confidence in the process. And we might remember very well, maybe in 2007, the biggest problem was that Kenyans did not see the courts as an option for you know, resolving such disputes. And perhaps the good senators in, you know, the many electoral reforms or constitutional reforms that they might want to consider is maybe, you know, I'm saying that this is proving to be a very big burden for the Supreme Court to, you know, come up with finality and, you know, in its freedom and in full independence to come up with a ruling that, you know, it might not be seemed to have political influence. Perhaps try to see if there can be other mechanisms of, you know, resolving presidential election disputes. Yeah. The reason I'm saying that there are a lot of things that, you know, might have been questionable, and, you know, even the senator, you know, raised some of his concerns that yes, they might have pronounced himself. If majority of the Kenyans have agreed with the but is it free from influence? Yeah. The reason I'm talking about that, we remember very well that just before, on the 25th, the High Court had come up, you know, Justice Odunga delivered a ruling on the legality of the, you know, returning officers and the way in which the Court of Appeal, you know, at 4:30, it was a public holiday, we all remember. It was overturned. Yes, and, you know, they gave final orders ex parte. And, you know, these are questionable things that many litigants have put such kind of actions in question. So for me, I think we should defend our judiciary by trying it not to have any influence from, you know, all quarters, especially the political quarter. Okay.
Honorable Ouda, now how does this play out in your own view? Because NASA maintains that they're not going to recognize President Uhuru as a legitimate president. How does it play out in the long run? What are the people of Kisumu Central telling you? What do they want going forward?
You know, this issue is not about Kisumu Central telling me. It's about Kenyans.
But they're the people you represent, so I know you talk to them directly.
Yeah, I will tell you one thing. I'm one of the leaders in NASA, though not a principal, and a member of NASA. Now, if you look at the percentages that voted that day, it speaks volume. And remember, as you know, the Jubilee Brigade, when they talk about 38%, that must have been 25%. And that is the truth, and they know it from where they are seated. Now, I should also tell you another thing here. That today, I'm shocked by Kimani Wamatangi. He's saying that the circumstances that welcome Uhuru Kenyatta from The Hague are different from the circumstances that welcome Raila Amolo Odinga. It is like saying the people welcomed Uhuru Kenyatta from The Hague are human beings, and the one who are welcoming Raila Odinga are animals who does not reason. I'm just giving an example because we are also human beings. We think. We cannot go to the airport to destroy our own airport. That one you should take to the bank. Then we should also ask another question. When they talk about us, I don't know, banning and stoning vehicles, Nyongo put it very clearly. I personally, my vehicle was stoned by a policeman at Uhuru Park. They were now throwing stones at Jacom's car, at my car, and other leaders' car, and throwing stones to our people. I'm asking myself, are these real policemen? I have posed another question. They are saying, and Mithika Linturi is saying here, that NASA supporters, or rather NASA demonstrators, are uncivilized. Then I ask him, are the business community in Nairobi, and because I see them, and I really wonder if they're business community, sometimes I wonder because they all have dreads, so I wonder. Now, I'm asking, are they civilized? Because I saw them one time here actually breaking shops, taking, so until the real business community decided they don't want the Nairobi businessmen community. So Mithika, when you talk about civility, are your own supporters, or rather are your own people who count our own people, are they civilized? That's the question. Now, going forward, the same people they now call uncivilized protesters have evolved over the years, from Ford to Ford Kenya, to NDP, to NAC, to 205 referendum, to 207 ODM, to COD, and now to NASA. Why I'm bringing that history is maybe because it may be lost to Mithika Linturi and Kimani Wamatangi here, that these are the same people who went on the streets in Kamukunji in 1991, accompanying Shikuku. These are the same people, and I see some of these people, I can name them by name. I still see them around Raila Amolo Odinga and the likes of Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. These are the same people who were there in 1997. These are the same people who fought so hard and died on the streets under the Moi regime. These are the same people who were in the 205 referendum, fighting hard under the Kibaki regime and 207 and now. Yeah. These are the same people who now today has made me to be a member of parliament, because then they were civilized because we were fighting to repeal Section 2A. Then they were civilized because they were fighting to bring multi-party democracy to this country, where now Kimani Wamatangi came from his business and became a senator. And if it was not for these uncivilized, so-called uncivilized demonstrators, today I'll not even be a member of parliament. Today, President Moi will still be a paramount chief, a paramount president in this country. And maybe the Zimbabwe scenario will be playing in Kenya. So we are telling them that struggle does not come easy. And it is the police that provoke our people. Our people are very civil. If they could have left us to march all the way. Anyway, to the scenario as I finish. Yes. As it is now, I always say when you want peace, you must be ready to give justice where it's due. And when there is no justice, you don't talk of peace. We can only move forward, one, if Mithika Linturi, Kimani Wamatangi, and their team agree that, one, the election in August was stolen. That, two, they have coerced every single institution in this Kenya and twisted them to declare Uhuru Kenyatta as president on, during the sham August election. They must accept that. They must accept that some of us support Raila Amolo Odinga not because he's a Luo, but because of his credentials in this country, and bash Uhuru Kenyatta because we remember the scandal in health, because we remember the standard gauge railway, because we remember the ills that actually eating this country. Some of us bash Uhuru Kenyatta because he gives a deafening ear to the plight of Kenyans, Trevor, and that then makes him an arrogant president. Okay. Some of us bash Jubilee because they have a deputy president or other conductor who believes that it does not matter how many people will die as long as he becomes president in 2022. And that makes him rogue. All right. Deputy president.
Speaking of the Kenyan people, let's bring in Usha Ozee here. What are they saying on social media, Usha?
Right, Trevor, they are saying a lot, of course, different people with the different opinions. So we start with Sam, who says, we can't talk about healing the nation when Jubilee and NASA are both seriously sticking to their parallel agendas without room of softening to allow any hope of compromise to come to agreement for the peace of the country. We also have Daudi, who says, you will never hear NASA leaders condemning looting or vandalizing or burning. It makes you feel like they support it. We also have Mitch, who says, national healing and cohesion has been preached. How should it succeed amidst such deep polarization and ethnicity among Kenyans? We need a miracle. We also have Javan, who says, before you throw a stone, actually this is a retweet from Kalonzo Musyoka, and he says, before you throw a stone against another Mwananchi for a politician, ask yourself, would he do the same for you? Let's keep peace. So therefore cancelling the previous tweet that said they never condemn violence. We also have Stephen, who says, were yesterday's Jubilee celebrations demonstrations licensed? We have Kenyans who are more Kenyans than others. We have Charles, who says those who lose are emotional. What stirs up emotions is insults from, quote, victors, right? And this is, of course, very important. And Senator Wamatangi, I would just like to ask, in light of course, the Supreme Court's ruling, and we have had reactions from leaders across the country, and we have seen some Jubilee leaders who have given their reactions. For example, we have Najib Balala, who said, we have won fair and square, and there's nothing like nusu mkate, regardless of what they want. We also have Mheshimiwa Mandago, who also sort of mimicked Raila Odinga and said, here he was saying the constitution was nice, and here the constitution has landed him. And I don't know, just not tying it down to the two of them, but what in general do you make of the utterances and in general the reactions of the Jubilee politicians after the ruling?
Well, let me say that the utterances by all, not only a few, but by all Jubilee politicians, one of the true and humble truth of what has happened, because you know, we've had to really persevere for all that period until yesterday now, when the court came out and gave the ruling that we knew there should be the truth of what happened on the 26th. And so I believe every politician would say the same, that finally the truth has been vindicated, that the will of Kenyans as expressed on the 8th and again on the 26th has been not only justified but upheld. I'm sure if you ask anybody else who cares for this country and for the truth, and more so, Usha, what I would like to say is that, you know, we must start now creating and advocating for a different narrative in as far as electioneering in this country is concerned. And this should be the narrative, that we must now let what the Constitution speaks to become the truth and the measure upon which we measure, we talk about election results. This is what I mean, that once you tell people go to the ballot box, let them go and vote. Once they vote, count their votes. And when you count their votes, say what the votes are, irrespective of whether you like the person who has won or you don't like the person who has lost. I mean, because that's the only way we can have a country that respects democracy, that respects constitutionalism, and more so, and lastly, it is because elections in Kenya have been not only hotly contested, but they've been the results and the reason why we have had to fight. Can we change this story and say that Kenyans can go and vote? Once they vote, their results will matter and they'll be upheld by all. You know, political players have taken as a ransom for too long.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Usha, do you still have more?
Yes, we also have Matthew, who says, what these Jubilee politicians don't understand is that ata tukikosa kubeba mawe, police will still disperse and shoot at NASA. We are peaceful. Police are the ones who make it unlawful. We have Daudi, who says, Raila took a gamble withdrawing from the elections. Nobody advised him that gambling can have two outcomes. We have Francis, who says, tell Uhuru Kenyatta to start dialogue with NASA leaders to unite Kenya. Kenya is bigger than any man. Kenya should not burn. And finally, we have John Githanga, who says, CS Maraga is an impartial judge. It is, however, ironical that the same people who called him Kora on September 1st are now applauding him. And of course, as you can see, just a correction, this is, of course, CJ Maraga, not CS Maraga. And as you can see, there's a lot more tweets, but in the interest of time, I won't be able to read them all. But hashtag AM Live NTV, that is, of course, how we keep the conversation going online. Back to you, Trevor.
Thanks, Usha. And it's interesting that you brought up something, and I want to play that soundbite from the CS, that's Najib Balala, who spoke yesterday in Mombasa, I believe, during the celebrations. Here's what he had to say.
Na uchaguzi wa Uhuru Kenyatta ni umekubalika na wananchi na ni wa kweli. Kwa hivyo leo tuko hapa, Mombasa nzima inasherehekea. Wale ambao wako tayari kushiriki na sisi kujenga taifa, tuko tayari. Wale wananuna na wanataka uvurugu, tutaweweka kando. Hakuna kubembelezana safari hii.
And Fred, I'd like to get your comments on that. When we talk about, I'll come to you because you're the one who brought up the dialogue, but let's start with Fred Ouda. When we talk about having dialogue, and then there are some leaders who are saying you either toe the line or hakuna kubembelezana around it. Where do we start?
Then you wonder what then other leaders will be talking about, because the truth is these people are not interested in dialogue. And I'm telling you, my friends, if this country is not readed off of the issue of 2022 succession politics, then we are not moving forward. And I'm telling you, There will be no dialogue here because these people will not come to the table with clean hands. There will be something. And let me tell you, President Uhuru Kenyatta has actually been held ransom. And I'm telling you the truth. The guy has been held ransom. Yeah. He cannot think clearly. He cannot move forward now as a president and talk like a president. Because him, incidentally, if at all he makes it, which I doubt, through this political process that you have now, yeah, he can only make it if he comes down and he said that he's going to talk as President Uhuru Kenyatta, okay, and not being led by the likes of Najib Balala here. So Najib Balala talks because that's why his bread is buttered. Mm-hmm. And the guy, akiongea ingine, the guy will be actually jobless tomorrow. Okay. So he cannot risk saying other thing. And when he says, hakuna kubembelezana, Balala na represent, and he's not representing anybody. In fact, he's a nobody in Mombasa politics. Everybody behind him is paying them. So to me, I don't take Balala seriously. Okay. And I'm saying, if they don't want dialogue, so be it. As we have a range of activities, we have so many, I cannot say them here because I'm not a principal, but I can tell them they should be prepared, that it will not be an easy path for them, especially when we see the very thread that we've worked so hard and lost so many lives, and especially from my community, to get us where we are today as Kenyans, being eroded by only two individuals in the name of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. We will not agree. We have fought other battles and we are ready to fight. A threat.
Are you saying that are you going to use constitutional means? Let's just make that clear.
Threatening Uhuru Kenyatta. Yeah. Even for us to get here, we have always fought so hard and used every single constitutional means to get here. So and we still have a lot of range of constitutional means that we are going to use to make sure that electoral justice and justice for Kenyans is achieved. All right. So Balala to me is a nobody.
Honorable Mithika, you wanted to come before I bring in Wamatangi?
Yeah, I find the comments by Honorable Balala quite careless and irresponsible personally. Because being one of the advisors of the president and sitting in his cabinet, he must be speaking in a manner that he tries to assist the president to bring the country together, regardless of the situation. And that's why I cannot excuse him for being irresponsible as a cabinet secretary. One, I think you remember, and you must know, probably, Balala may be behaving that way because, you know, now he must also be trying to put a brave face and a strong fight for himself. You know, the likelihood of him becoming jobless is quite high. It's quite high. And if he shows to be more impressive in defending the president, regardless of whether the manner in which he conducts himself has potential, even breaking or dividing the country more, to him doesn't matter, because he must appear to be a fighter. So whatever he has done, his comments, in my view, are not warranted, are not for Linda Worth sitting in that particular office, especially at a time like now. And if this is, you know, this is the nature of our cabinet today, because remember, if these people are sacked and become jobless, unlike before, where if it was Matangi or Kimani or anybody else who has support from the people, who is elected by the people, you don't, you base your advice to the president on objectivity, regardless whether he will sack you or not. Because even if he did sack you, you can come back to Parliament and work and do what the people have sent you. This is the problem, and that's why I'm saying the sooner we start debate on constitutional review, and especially on ensuring that the people's voice is heard and is done through their elected representatives, the better. And that's even why the work of the president, why it will be easier to unite the country, because the ultimate decision makers are the people that will have gotten power from the Mwananchi.
Collins, I'm trying to keep you out of the political debate because I know you're a lawyer, but somehow you just have to be roped in. On Balala's comments, and also I know you've had a chance to review the constitution as well. Do you think there are certain loopholes that need to be fixed? Because the legislators here are saying that it's time for constitutional review.
Yes, I must not be a politician to have an opinion on such matters, but I mean, just as Honorable Linturi has rightly put, I mean, it's very sad to hear such comments, especially in a nation that is ailing and is bruising in terms of inclusivity, and this is a very big issue. And I might now even talk as a youth. I think the youth in the nation, these are part of the groups that feel marginalized, in national development. And I think these are some of the things that the Jubilee Coalition may want to look into very seriously, so as to, settle this disgruntlement among citizens of the Republic. People feel marginalized and they don't feel included, especially in this, some of these prime positions. The cabinet, the president, of course, after the next week, will be appointing the cabinet secretaries and the PS, the CS, and all whatnot. Yeah. So there should be, it should not only seem to be done, but it ought to be done. Yeah. We need to see inclusivity, I mean, the whole Republic being represented. But just moving forward, I was just looking at some of these constitutional provisions. I mean, for the Jubilee side, I think it's more of deja vu in that next week we'll be having the coronation of Uhuru Kenyatta as the next president. But you see, NASA, of course, said that the Supreme Court was not part of the agenda. And you remember some time back, the Honorable Raila Odinga talked of a number of measures that they'll take as NASA, just to push the agenda. And they talked of, coming up with the people's assemblies. And I was trying to look at some of these things that people are talking of and they're trying to throng, in the media, so as to include even things like secession. And as much as it may seem very delicate, this is a matter that, of course, is not legal, is not constitutionally provided for. Yeah. But there are constitutional means in which somebody can achieve such kind of measure. Okay. And I'd like to look at, people could look at Chapter 16, where it talks of amendment of the Constitution. Okay. And in 255, it even talks of, a proposed amendment to the Constitution can include up to the territory of Kenya. And if you read through going down 256, 257, it talks of, a referendum just needs an approval of, at least 25% of registered voters in more than half of the counties, that is 24 counties. And this is something that is very much attainable. So these are some of the things, I think for NASA, it is not all lost. These are things that they can from using the, the People's Assembly, the county assemblies, their members of parliament. And just very interesting to note is that... Very briefly, because we're running out of time. Yes, just very interesting to note is that in the event that, because the resolutions that are made in the county assembly level are shot down at the parliamentary level, of course with the numbers of the Jubilee, the same will be, put back to the public. So I think NASA as a coalition might want to talk to his supporters, so that, because I know they believed in the agenda and their manifesto, so that they know, so that they can push their thing, they can use constitutional means to achieve the end. So we must now dialogue and, move this country forward in a way that brings development. All right, we've run out of time here, but Wamatangi, I'll give you final thoughts, 30 seconds each, so that we finish up. Sure. Very briefly.
Thank you. Trevor, there's something that we really missed, would have wanted to discuss. Maybe next time we will. See, there was this ruling that was made in Kitui against either discussing or adoption by county assemblies of that proposed People's Assembly. That ruling was given yesterday in a Kitui court that barred all county assemblies from debating. It would have been a very interesting subject to look at today, but I would leave it until next time. There will still be reactions and probably talk about it, yes. Now, but let me say two things very quickly, as you've given me that opportunity. And I want to begin by what was said by my friend Ouda. Just Mheshimiwa, to really ask you, in the course of us starting our political careers and pursuing them now to be politicians of stature, there is this tendency that we always fall into, to go and collect political adjectives and cliches and lines that have been dropped by politicians who now wield you know, power that we would want to have ourselves, and then
Yeah.
and you make it your own.
Yeah.
And every time when you hear that you say Uhuru Kenyatta is one,
Briefly,
and
briefly,
so
time. We're
so that's
running
what I'm
out of
saying.
time.
That I would want
Summarize.
to advise my friend that you know, it's important in the pursuit of political career.
Yes.
You know, to try and be your own man.
Okay.
You know, and pursue and you know, an agenda
Your own trail of thought. All right.
that will help you. Lastly.